The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
LA, straight up. Just go out to LA. The new anthem. California Love Part 2. One time. To live in LA. West side, west side, west side. To live in LA, where everybody try to fatten their pocket. So many hustle for the cash, so it's hard to knock it. Everybody got
Hello. God bless your community family, and welcome to Gang Talk with Sister Heron tonight. And in Skip's absence, I asked Jaime Rarebury to come join us tonight, and he was gracious enough and made himself available, as he always tries to do when we ask him to step in and join us. So, Jaime, welcome to Gang Talk.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You know, being a /guest/ co-host, you know, I can't fill Mr. Skip Townsend's shoes, but I'm going to do what I do, you know, and what God ordained me to do on this mic today.
There it is, because, you know, this hour is about real talk.
Definitely.
Yeah, we don't have an hour to play around with you, family. We're not playing with you. You know, it's very serious business. We take it seriously, and this is our commitment to try to make things better for ourselves. So that's why we're here, and that's why we bring wonderful folks like Jaime and Skip as our co-host and the guests that we invite to come speak with you about this. So our usual habit is to thank our guests from last week, but if you've been following us, you can see that it's been a little chaotic in the last 2 weeks, because I'm going to say that week before last week, we had the highest-ranking officer at South Bureau, LAPD, join us as a guest to talk about the reduction in gang crimes in South Bureau, and that was very happy news, and to admit that community action and activism and the things that this young man does is a thing that has made the difference here. Yeah, because it's been historic for LAPD to take credit. They've always taken credit.
All the time.
All the time. But this time they actually acknowledged the men from the grid that actually put their life on the line to make peace possible in our community. So that was a big deal to have him come and kind of thank the community for being involved, paying attention, and helping law enforcement get a handle on our nightmare. Without just killing us. And so that was a good conversation. It was very productive. But then a week later, we had that horrific shooting of the mentally challenged man in the Crenshaw Mall. Yeah. And that was actually a week later, Tuesday. Yeah. We met at South Bureau on a Tuesday, and the following week on a Tuesday, they killed this mentally challenged young man in the Crenshaw Mall. So we saw that as detrimental to our understanding.
Yeah. We always see that progress, and then after that, we get that one step back that just messes us all up with that relationship with law enforcement.
Yes, it does. And the sad reality for us is that we've been after them about the mentally challenged members of our family, our community. We've been doing that for quite a while, and that really dates back to the unfair, unjust killing of Stephen Eugene Washington. And that was in 2007. And bless Stephen's heart, he was an autistic man, 27 years old, autistic his whole life, just trying to navigate with his condition as an adult. And it was, I don't want to curse, but it was a very unjust. It was unjust. The shooting was so foul that the officers actually lied on their police report.
Wow.
They actually lied on their police report, and they were caught in that lie and disciplined. Chief Beck actually put them on a job reduction, discipline kind of thing, and in their resentment of not being able to promote, not being able to go back out in the field and shoot anybody else, they sued the city. They thought that that was an unfair job action. We thought that you took this life unfairly and you didn't deserve, as we said, Chief Tangarides last week that in our community you only get one shooting, one killing, one. And then we don't want you around patrolling us anymore. But in any case, I want to move forward because Jaime is our special guest tonight. We were expecting Kim McGill.
Real talking, that's all. Just real talking, that's all.
Real talk, okay.
That's real talk going on.
Well, we were expecting Kim McGill from Youth Justice Coalition to come in and talk about the changes in the gang injunction and also the gang database because they have actually worked a political platform that has...
She put in a lot of work.
A lot of work.
We got to stand behind those people. You know, they fighting to get... At the same time, it's like homelessness situation. You're still in the community and you got to pay your rent or you got to move. And that's what they're dealing with right now with the Chuco's Youth Coalition.
Yes.
They getting re-gentrified over there in their community and they got to relocate.
Yes.
And they need the funding, they need the support, and they've done a whole lot not for them to just have to wither away and not have that foundation to work on. And they deal with a lot of kids. They save a lot of lives.
Yes, they do.
And those kids, in turn, once they get re-educated and they get filled with the information, they go out there and put in so much work in City Hall.
They do. They really do. And I want to, I don't usually promote organizations because it's a jealousy kind of factor among them. If you're going to talk about them, you got to talk about mine, and then, here we go. But I'm going to give standing ovation to Youth Justice Coalition because they have pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until they've accomplished something. And their foundation, they started as an alternative school. An alternative school for kids that the LAUSD didn't want to bother with anymore and just kind of kicked out of the system with no place to go. Well, Chuco's Justice Center came in and gave them a place where they could get their GED, where they could be among their peers and talk out their frustrations and work it out that way. So just when you think that nothing's happening, you need to recognize organizations like Youth Justice Coalition and give them credit for the work that they actually are doing. So we miss Kim. I made a mistake of scheduling her Resurrection Weekend and forgot that the studio was closed that week. So
you definitely got to get her in here for that information because that information needs to go out on every platform. And we need to hear what she has to say and what she has in place. I never seen her stand up and speak on something and not have a solution to it.
Right.
And that's what we need. We got to stop having these feel-good sessions. We got to stop talking about stuff that just bothers your heart and you don't have a plan. You don't have numbers on papers. You don't have statistics. You don't have none of this stuff to follow up and back up your complaint.
Right.
And that's the process. And we don't know how to do the things that we stand out and do. We just get mad and we jump out. We want to go out here. And like even with these rallies, I respect the rallies. I understand them. But if you don't have an agenda behind it, why are you out here? You just out here to kick up dust. And if they come out there and give you what you want to be heard. If they say, okay, we listening, do you have what you need?
Right. Well, and I'm sorry because you're making a point here that's very important because I was really frustrated. As much as I support Black Lives Matter and their agenda, I really wanted them to do more than ask for Chief Beck to be fired. Yeah. I wanted them to put in a policy issue. We need to go after the way your officers are acting. Really have something to go after him for other than his firing. See, because the problem with that, he's fired, but who's coming next?
Yeah.
Okay, and whoever's coming next, what if we force them to change? And the mental health, the way this young man was killed in the Crenshaw Mall is a perfect example of trying to get results from them, get some kind of difference. And to be fair, Chief Tangarides did admit that it was a lose-lose. It was a lose-lose, that mall incident. And for me, Thursday, I saw another film clip. A homeless man in Pacoima walking around the parking lot threatening people with a rusty machete. Very long knife, very long blade on it, rusty. He's walking around that parking lot waving it at people and threatening them. Well, when the police arrived, it was a whole different tactical approach. Yeah. Okay, they kind of surrounded him, which is my concern with Crenshaw. You really weren't prepared.
Yeah.
Southwest was not prepared for that because they should have contained his ability to move around.
Exactly.
Move around them all. That should have been the first thing they contained. In this case, Thursday in Pacoima with the machete, they kind of surrounded him and kept firing beanbag shots at him till he fell. Yeah. That's how they handled it. They shot him up with beanbags. Every officer had a beanbag rifle. They shot him until he fell. That's when they swarmed in. And they had 8 to 10 officers on him.
Yeah.
8 to 10 officers working that. But it's the difference in the approach.
And they just had a situation, we was told at the meeting last night that somebody was self-inflicting wounds, stabbing himself, and a police officer shot him. So I don't know if they were helping him or just, what kind of help they were getting. Were they rushing it along? And that's another issue that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
So, just the aftermath of all this stuff is crazy. They're making bad decisions in this police force, and I don't think they're really qualified to do the jobs that they're set out to do in these communities. Everybody goes to, and I've worked in LAPD on assignment as a journeyman in my trade, and I see these officers coming in this training, and their mindset is on, going through the training, barely making it, and then they want to go, in the fluffy precincts where it's all good, and they're getting cats out of the tree, and in West LA type of stuff. But then they get out here in these jungles, and I don't think they're really training them for that.
It's such a mixed bag of stuff. And this is what's so important about Ceasefire and the men from Ceasefire that had the opportunity to do that sensitivity training with them.
Yeah.
The beauty about the sensitivity training is that we're telling them what's acceptable, what's not going to cause things to escalate. We're working with them on that level, trying to teach them how to respect the community and just not disrespect us.
And what's bad about it is we work with them. We see their flaws. We get an understanding with them to take back to the community. And every time, and it's hard to convince the community that the police are not all bad. The police are there for you to a certain degree. Yeah. And they're allowing us to police our own. Well, and then they retract and do something real bad. And then you get looked at in the community like, see, you trusting the wrong people.
Right. Isn't that the way it always goes, Jaime?
Yeah.
We try to push and get policy change, make things change, and then they do something and push us all. Like somebody says, a piece of cord vaporizes at that moment, and it does. It really does. It vaporizes, and we're back to square one, starting over. Yeah. But what I want to say about that community sensitivity training that you guys got to conduct, you got a chance to put your first eyes on these guys coming to us, okay? Exactly. And you can see. As a person of color, you can see, you can feel that heat coming from somebody that doesn't like you.
Exactly.
You can feel it.
Just the resistance where we really out here for another assignment.
Yeah.
And, it's just, they blame it on people from the community not signing up for, to be law enforcement officers and we got to put anybody in here, things like that. But you're not doing that to encourage nobody, And it's a sad situation we dealing with in this community. And if we don't stand as a unit with it all, then it's going to fall by the wayside and we're not going to get no result. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, actually, Jaime, I really believe, I don't mean to contradict you, but, starting in 88, I see how we have changed. We are changing. The homicides are not what they used to be.
No.
That's the best news I can share with you, family. We're not killing each other the way we did when I started.
That's the upside.
That's the upside. Now, that's because we have, as a people, have decided we've had enough. And the truth is, LAPD can't fix what's broken in me. Yeah. They can only arrest me. That's the only thing they can do. They have the power of the law, but they cannot fix what's broken in me. All right. And their history is part of what has damaged me, their conduct, to find out that this is what made it so critical to speak to Kim about this injunction, because it turns out that the crash, the early crash unit, I don't know what the acronym, I can't think of the acronym stands for, but I'm going to be generous and say 80% of the crash officers were corrupt. 80%. More than 80%. Let me just say it that way. More than 80% of the crash officers were corrupt. And when you see the Rampart scandal, it was corruption in Rampart. It was corruption in South Bureau, too. So it was a crash. At the time, they were giving us a Jang injunction, depending on who you're standing with.
And there was the youngsters like me back then. I was young. I was a teenager dealing with the force of that injunction. We were deemed criminals. We were deemed, menace to society.
Yes.
And just the way we looked would identified us to be a part of that. And if you were a part of that, then they had an agenda for you.
Yes, they did.
They did. And we suffer from that, and it's trauma behind that.
Yes,
it's things that we remember as kids. Like who gets beat up and dropped off in the so-called enemy territory. Things of that nature. Where they take cars out of impounds and do drive-bys with them. It was a whole lot of corrupt stuff going on that I can attest to, that I've seen for self, that I've lived day to day myself, and I wasn't in the thick of it like that, but I was still in the trenches, at the same time, and it evolved from that, but now we got that other unit that's coming out here going against the grain of what the grid is putting together with LAPD now. And like when you come up with your grid badge to do the intervention work, they don't want to hear anything. They have to come and press the way that they were taught to press after a certain amount of stuff going on in the community. Now they come in full force.
You know what? And I'm sorry, family. That from Daryl Gates, that's a policy that has not worked for my community. It hasn't worked for my people. It has not worked for my community, and it has not created or generated a better relationship with them, not at all. And to push us aside is vaporizing everything that Ceasefire and Watch Gang Task Force has been working over 10 years to achieve. And that's critical communication with those that have the power and the license to kill us. Let me say that one more time. They have the power and the license to kill you and your family. So people that think, they just did their job in the mall last week, what if that was your son?
Yeah.
What if that was your brother? Yeah. What if that was your grandchild? See, because I have challenges in my family. Okay? Yeah. Yes. Mental challenges. Autism. And I say that because people go around giving a blanket, they just did their job, because that wasn't your relative.
Yeah.
Okay? But when you see that a different approach was handled the same week in another part of the community with a man threatening folks in that parking lot with a rusty machete.
He got the treatment the little high school guy got, huh?
I don't know about the high school guy, but they beanbagged that madman.
Remember the guy that killed the people, and then they went in there and walked him out?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
You're talking about, yes. Oh
yeah, he get that treatment. So.
Yes. Oh my! You know what? That guy actually left. He walked out with the victims with his hands up. He blended in with the students trying to get out of that school.
Yeah.
Okay, and then as they're going this way, he turns this way, walks down the highway, and goes to Walmart. Yeah. That's where they picked him up. He's on his way to Walmart or on his way back from Walmart. I'm not sure, but he's walking down the highway. But that's how he made his exit. He walked out of that school after killing all those people. He walked out in the crowd of the teenagers. And the sad reality for us, it's the same thing that happened in Charleston at the church. Mm-hmm. You know, that young man came in and killed 9 of those church members, including the pastor, and He feels like he should go home, and they pick him up and take him to Burger King because he tells them he's hungry.
Yeah. Well, with the police shooting thing, it goes back to, and a lot of people don't like to dig history up and don't like to look at the old laws of how this nation was built, and a lot of them slave laws still apply today.
Oh. The right to vote is still an issue, and the sad reality, they gave us the right to vote, but it comes up for review and every 25 years. Yeah. So it's only a temporary right to vote. Every 25 years, they can change their mind and take it back, technically, if they want to. Yeah. And the truth is that right to vote also includes women.
Oh, yeah, that law came in effect, too.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that a mess?
We got to stay on our toes. We need a lot of people. We had an enlightening meeting last night where we're getting more involved, where we can get involved with the groups that's going after these bills and things, because that's what we need to be doing. We have to evolve from that gang banging table where, it's only gang members. It's evolving. We need to be community intervention. We need to work in the community based on what's going on with your family. It's not just a little homie stuck in the hood. We work with people that's not just dealing with gangs. We deal with people with so many different kind of peer pressure. People dealing with, these youngsters dealing with so much drug problem, so much drug addiction right now. Yes. And it ain't even a gang banging thing. Back then it was you hanging with the homies, you drinking 40s, you smoking weed, or whatever the case. Now it's just, we just turned up doing whatever, however, this is how we get out. Right. And we need to address that problem.
We do. And the truth is, the drug arena is not just a challenge for us. It's a challenge across this country. I mean, they having heroin overdoses and deaths in places people, oh, no, that doesn't happen in my neighborhood. Well, guess what? It's happening now in 2018. Yeah. And it's a sad truth that people keep their eyes on us without looking in their own backyard to see what's going on for them. And heroin is on the increase. Meth has replaced the crack use wherever it is. It's not about crack now. It's about methamphetamines, and it's about oxycodone. And
all the mixing of the pills that they doing right now. I mean, I can't even keep up with it. It's crazy when I see these youth out here just thinking it's okay to it's normal to pop this pill and feel this way, and it's not normal. That's a lot of, you don't even know what's in it.
Well, let me ask it this way. The pill popping thing kind of, and if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me because I'm not the expert, but it came about, the increase came about with rave parties. People want to go to these organized party events. The last raid they had at the Coliseum, Chief Gannon was the police chief, and they had this Daisy rave at the Coliseum. It was the last one, and he said if he had 1,000 police officers at the Coliseum that night, he could have arrested over 1,000 drug dealers. Yeah. Over 1,000 drug dealers at the Coliseum that night for that rave. And the sad reality is a little 14-year-old girl died. Wow. She died just from you said. She took that drug. She didn't know what it was, and it killed her. So it is a big concern. And I hate to say it this way, but black folks seem to understand this dynamic more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we've been through the devastation of the crack years. We know that that's an addiction that's going to take everything, including your life, if you let it. But folks say
acid, the crack, the sherm. We've been through a whole lot of eras, epidemics. You know, and,
epidemics.
I got young boys. My boys are in their 20s, and I try to keep up with it through them, and I see what's going on through them and their peers, and all I could do is plant a seed and just back away. You can't force feed nothing, but then you see how they talk about it. Like if a pill is so dangerous and so strong, they'll break it 2 to 3 ways just because they fear what it'll do to them. But you have this fear of something that you're still taking.
You're still taking it.
You're still taking it.
You're still going to take it. Right. And that's a dilemma for this generation. They've been exposed to so much, and it's like they have a choice. And what seemed to, and I'm sorry to say it this way, but what seemed to be acceptable was that ecstasy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, everybody wanted to do the X. It's like, oh, okay.
And that's one of the ones that trickled down and created like the birth of this other stuff.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's like in my past I did things that I wouldn't even know how to do things illegal these days because it's just so whacked out. There's so much going on, and it's not even worth it. Whether you selling it or you doing it, it's still a hazard to your health.
Yes.
And we need to wait. Like we need to be the DARE program for the youth today.
Yes, we do.
And that's something we're trying to push as well. We're trying to get in these schools. We don't want these elementary kids to follow behind these junior high school kids because they're starting young as junior high.
Oh, they are. They are.
And it's so out of control. They outside when they need to be inside getting ready for school.
Yeah.
They out here they hanging out with adults, and then we still got that epidemic of parents, hanging out with their kids.
We have the crack generations.
Yeah.
Okay, and some of our children were born with crack in their system. Some of their parents were addicted to crack. Some of them, because of their parents' condition, got involved in the lifestyle, selling, protecting themselves as sellers, which led to violence and murder to protect your turf. It's all kinds of things we've been through. The thing is that we're coming away from the drug dealing murder. That's the thing that's changing here. The drug use is reducing, but at the same time, as you said, Jaime, the drug is changing. Mm-hmm. It's changing. So we have a lot of avenues as a people that we really need to be covering, and folks don't understand it's their own apathy that allows this to go on.
And I see a lot of, like, recently I just started a service, a job where, I'm dealing with the homeless people.
Yes.
And I seen babies, like this week alone, like it's so heartbreaking. I see 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds, they pregnant on the streets. Mm-hmm. They got their boyfriends with them. They doped out. They tatted up, and they living in these streets and they conversating in this everyday life. But at the same time, they got a joy about life at the same time. This freedom gives them this joy about life where they don't even stress like the other people do.
That sounds like my phone. I hope that's not my guest calling, bless her heart, but we can't get to that.
She know the rules. She got to turn that phone off.
Yeah, she knows. It's all right, because I'm happy to have you here, Jaime. We don't get to talk to you often enough, and the beauty about it is from your own history, and you don't have to share any part of that you don't want to, but you found your way back to come back and try to make a difference for us from whatever you were doing before, whatever you've been through changed you and really brought you back to us.
Yeah, and I share it all because it's all helpful, and that's why I put the music component behind it to speak life into people that don't want to hear people talking. So, giving these assignments and being able to come to the table where I met you at, it's a blessing because I didn't know who I was going to be, what I was going to be. I just know I needed to change when I left. And actually this month is April 11th, made 9 years I've been home. So that's something that I celebrated and didn't realize that this time came up so fast because I'm so busy. And I look back at the track 9 years, and it's a lot that I can look back on it and reflect on it. Mm-hmm. Stuff that I even forgot, like this passion really became a purpose.
Yes.
And seeing models like yourself and the tacos and the Skips, and like I really I'm forever gonna call Skip long as I got his number because he's so helpful in the things that's going on in this community. He's educated himself to be a resource for his people. Mm-hmm. And that's what we got to do when we come up out of that turmoil, we come up out of that dark lifestyle. When you become a light, you really have to shine. And so many people don't hold fast to that responsibility. They make every excuse to wean away from it. Like, and for me, like, I'm still pushing the way that I pushed from day one when I came. And I pushed less then because I had to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And I had to observe before I could just jump ahead. I'm like, man, I'm ready, but I didn't have the tools and I didn't have the resources. And as I gather the resources, my push gets harder. It doesn't get slower. I'm not slowing down. Right. And that's the blessing behind, being able to sit at these tables, deal with grid programs and all these other programs that I'm able to fit myself in based on people seeing me from the works. And I get invited to so many things to help build those things, to help be an asset to those things based on the work that I already do. And it's leading by example. I'm not out there forcing nobody. I'm just out there walking my walk, leading, being the leader that I need to be, and being a leader that follows other leaders. And that's where a lot of people don't get it. You have to follow other leaders, whether you disagree with something. If that person is about the peace and that person has a mechanism to add, to put a tool in a toolbox, you don't have to fully agree with it. If it's effective, then let's push forward and see what's going on. And then later on, somewhere down the line, I found me being able to add my components to it, and then it goes together and the machine is stronger.
Right.
So we have to be unified, and I can't stress enough: unify. Every time I talk to people, I say we have to move by the masses. If we don't move by the masses, and coming from your era, y'all move big. Okay. When the Black Panther moved, when the Nation of Islam gathered, when all these, even when the Crips and Bloods decided to do something, they did it big, and we did it, even though it was
in '92. Yeah. In '92, when the Watts community reached across the table, red and blue, set up that peace accord. That was before the uprising against LAPD.
And we forever gonna have people that taint it. We forever gonna have infiltration. People are gonna be moles. People are gonna be systematically set inside of us so that we can be a danger to ourselves at this point in time. Right now, we're so much poison within ourselves where they don't have to come out and do nothing.
Let me put it this way. Would you agree that we're angry?
Angry?
As a people, we're kind of angry.
Yeah.
And
we're allowed, but what do you do with that anger?
Actually, we're not allowed. I think that's part of our frustration. We're angry, but we're not allowed to be angry. Yeah. We're not allowed to express what our frustrations are. We're not allowed to talk about what angers us. When police excessive force is at the top of my list of what angers me. And then knowing that I have mentally challenged in my own family, and they go and shoot a man like that in the mall, I can't tie them together. And so these are things that keep my spirit constantly, Lord, help me through this. Yeah.
And when I think about that anger, I just dig into the root. It's so many roots to pick at, from the ancestral slave trade roots, from us trading each other to them trading with us to
that Starbucks last week.
To that Starbucks to them systematic putting drugs in us to make us messed up. You got more kids diagnosed with cancer nowadays, and you rarely see a kid with chickenpox. But remember when chickenpox and measles, and they're still giving us those shots.
Right. And, we have an increase in autism as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I really believe that these are man-made diseases. Yeah. There's something that we're doing. Processed food.
Chemtrails. We got processed food. We got, they can't make enough chicken for the black man to fry up, so they got to clone it. And
additives, preservatives, all kinds of chemicals. I wouldn't take a synthetic pill from Dow if they paid me to take it. Yeah. You see, it's too high a risk. Yeah. You're giving me synthetics and trying to convince me, like the ads for these new drugs. Yeah. Ads for is this my guest coming in? Guest. Precious, come on in here. Take a seat right here. Just right here, so we don't have to do any adjusting or any of that. Come on, baby. And you come on in and just start. Because there she is. So you blowing up my cell phone.
I know, we were trying to get in. It was all trapped. Everything was locked.
Hold on, let me get you a chair.
Okay.
Come on, Kim.
Come on, Kim.
Man,
let's sit right here.
Instructions.
Get in. You cut into the hour. Let's go.
See, because this lady right here comes in with this backpack. She just walks around with it as a part of her anatomy.
That's my computer. That's my baby.
I know you got all your stuff in there. I know you do.
Hey, everybody.
Well, let's introduce you. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to do the same thing, okay?
Hi, we're from the Youth Justice Coalition. My name is Kim McGill. And the YJC was started by people that had been locked up, detained, incarcerated, some deported as young people. And we wanted to fight for a different kind of justice and public safety vision for LA County, especially since LA County locks up more people than any place else in the world.
Well, we're going to get to that conversation. We just doing introductions, but you see, Kim always got something to tell us. It's a really excellent news. I'm so glad you came tonight. Bless your heart.
Hello, my name is Lupita. I'm a youth organizer, community organizer with the Youth Justice Coalition. And I got involved with the YJC because they also have a high school. So I entered there with expectations of getting a high school diploma. But I also came out with being a community organizer.
Yes. And how old are you now?
18.
Look at that. See, this is the kind of amazing things that this lady right here has been involved in since I met her. And that's trying to find and make a place for our young people that they feel safe, they feel comfortable, confident to come discuss their own frustrations, because I don't know a teenager that doesn't have some kind of angst. Okay, in 2018, it's a lot of pressure on our young folks. So what we don't have is enough Kim McGills.
Or Jaimes or Lupitas or Sister Herons.
Well, we're working on the Jaimes, but we don't have enough Kims.
We need more Kims.
We need more Kims.
I'm learning from the Kims.
Okay, because tell us why. Tell our listeners why you're here tonight. Why I asked you to come. Because this is big.
Two things. One is that we had a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles called Youth Justice Coalition versus the city of Los Angeles. And last month we heard from the judge that they ruled in our favor. What the lawsuit does is it basically said that all gang injunctions in the city of Los Angeles were unconstitutional because they had been served incorrectly. So out of nearly 10,000 people on gang injunctions in the city of LA, that's 82 neighborhoods, 49 injunctions. Almost everybody now is off of them. There's just a handful of people that are still on because their service was done more correctly. What does it mean to be illegally served? It meant that there was no real opportunity for people to come to court and challenge the fact that they were being labeled as gang members.
Right.
And so based on court law, case law that's been won in other parts of the state, but this is really the first big, huge case victory in California that says that you can't treat people differently under the law than their neighbors simply because you're alleging that they're gang involved. The reason that Youth Justice Coalition brought the lawsuit was that we were seeing three things with gang injunctions. One is that it didn't really increase public safety because you're locking down neighborhoods and you're telling people they can no longer associate with each other. You also locked people out of opportunities, out of public housing, out of jobs, off of public transportation. People described it. One of our members, Alberto Casares, who unfortunately died in a car accident, rest in peace, but he challenged one of the first gang injunction challenges he made. He called it a prison without walls because people are treated totally different under the law and locked out of opportunities. The second reason they don't work is that when we looked at gang injunctions going all the way back to 1982 when they started in LA County, they weren't put in the places where there was the most levels of violence or homicide. They were put in the places that were either surrounded by white communities where people of color were moving in and the white people were getting anxious about that, or people of color were moving into the schools and white people were getting upset, or they were put in place where white people were moving in or other people with money were moving in and they were gentrifying or pushing out or displacing the population that had been there. That's how gang injunctions have been used since 82, and you could see it more recently. For example, Echo Park, the 60s, the 40s, they didn't any of them get their injunctions until gentrification was happening in those areas long after the violence was down. And the violence has been historically down. Since the 1950s, we've never had such low crime rates. And then the third reason that we really wanted to challenge gang injunctions is the question of your constitutional rights, your rights as a person living in the United States or the state of California. And one of the core aspects that people preach about, of course, doesn't get upheld is that you should be equal under the law. That if I could carry a beeper or a cell phone, then someone who's, the police want to claim is gang involved should also be able to carry a beeper or cell phone. people weren't allowed to associate with their own family members outside the home. So there was raids on repasses, raids on candlelight vigils, raids on baby showers. People were excluded from public resources like job training.
They actually used to drive through the neighborhood and know somebody on that block, and if you were standing with them, they'd take your picture and shove that gang injunction paper, just throw it out the window and just tell you, you're in the injunction now.
Yeah, and that was...
There was no right, no recourse, no way to protest. It was just a blanket. See, because before you got here, we were discussing the corruption of Crash. Okay, and Crash is the gang that was supposedly handling gang violence. And I just learned that at least 80% of Crash officers were corrupt.
The thing that was crazy about Crash, too, it was started by Gates even before he was chief.
Yes.
And it was the nation's first gang unit. The first name for it was Trash. So they weren't even trying to, like, make any kind of, like, they knew, they were basically putting it out there. This is what we think of you.
Yeah.
And it stood for Total Resources Against Street Hoodlums.
Oh, my God.
That's what the LAPD's term was for it. And then Crash, they got so much flack for using the term trash that they renamed it to Crash, which was community resources, but it was still against street hoodlums.
Right.
The fact that they labeled people as basically, disposable people, not to have any kind of value for their communities.
Yeah, I never knew one time that they marked me down on that card as being affiliated from the gang. And every time I got pulled over, they made one of those cards. Only way I found out is when I was federally indicted and they needed more evidence for their case, and all that stuff came up, and I seen every card they ever filled out.
Right.
And what Jaime is describing is what's called a gang database.
The database,
so that's different than the gang injunctions, but they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
And
sharing information. That's
right.
what the database is. The agency sharing information about you.
Mm-hmm. And the cards he started describing is what's called a field interview card, a FI card. Some departments call it field information card, but it's a field interview card is the most common term. And basically they can take pictures of you, pictures of your tattoos,
right.
and there's no age limit.
Do.
So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds can be on that database, and we've proved that children are on it. So we also changed several state laws. We've passed 3 laws now at the state level to challenge the gang databases. So now for the first time, people they have the right to be notified if they're added. They have the right to challenge it at the agency level, and if that's not successful, to challenge it in the court level to clear their names. So if people want to get off a gang injunction or ensure that they're off it, or they want to try to fight a gang injunction outside of LA City where it still might be in place, or you want a challenge to get your name off the gang database, we really encourage everybody to contact us, and we want to help with all of that.
Mm-hmm. To get your name removed from the database
and
to get out of the gang injunction, because they are 2 different issues here. Your name is in the database. They share that information with all kinds of law enforcement agencies all over the place, not just Los Angeles. It could be a database from New York.
Even ICE.
Yes, even ICE. Yes, that's very important as well. And I wanted you to chime in a little bit here. Tell us about your experience being an activist now at 18.
It's pretty cool. So, like, last year, I know we was going to a bill that it was just like that. So if we didn't win the lawsuit, then at least we won it statewide, And I do remember going up there and challenging the legislators and their staffers and actually getting them to be in our shoes, like being a block with us one day. Like, we telling them it only takes about 3 things to get on this gang database with a whole bunch of other things as well. Like, it only takes about the color you're wearing, a certain hat you're wearing, at a certain neighborhood, a certain corner you're standing at a certain neighborhood. And it's like, I live here. Like, I can't wear this color. Right. I live around here. I can't just walk to this block, I can't wear this hat. This is my favorite baseball team. Like, I grew up. Everybody knows about this baseball team, So, like, just things like that, and actually getting them into actually, like, it's a pretty amazing experience to go to the staffers and actually try to convince them, and not only convince them, but tell them a story that is gonna take them until they're eating dinner with their family and actually realize it. Like, damn, like, I'm eating good right now. I have my son with me right now, but there's other kids that are not my son, you know? Yeah. So that's why it's very important for us people from the community to go to the Capitol to legislate for different laws that are good for our community, you know? So they can also take that home with them. And it's like, wow, we're not unity at all, you know? We're diverse, and they probably don't see it. And by us going up there, they're going to see it. Yeah. They're going to see it by our stories, you know?
Well, you know, the beauty about it, for me, your generation is going to change things, really, because you got the leadership to give you the opportunity, the access to show you how we have to push the things that we want for ourselves. This is one of the things that makes me really proud about you and what you do. You create young people like her.
Oh, she created herself.
But you give her.
No, she gave us a platform.
There it is.
She gave us something to stand on, you know?
Empowerment. See, because what we're not looking at, the apathetic that think, oh, let this thing just fix itself. Well, as we get them out of the street, where do we send them? Yeah. We get them out of the gang environment. Where's their next door? Yeah. You see, and that's the missing link in us. And I love the way you say we. See, this is a we thing. It's a we thing. We all are
could
in
do this.
Yeah.
We all could do this.
And I like the way that she models herself to deal with the youth. She teaches them. She gives them a platform. She shows them direction. And she's not trying to be the voice for them. No. She speaks when she has to speak, when necessary, but she allows the youth to speak and be the voice for us, because we got to sit our old selves down and be in support of the youth, because the youth been part of every movement from the beginning, from gangs to Black Panther parties. It was youth that started these movements.
Yeah, and the truth is they're the ones that are going to be impacted if we don't give them a sense of empowerment. Exactly. They're just going to take whatever the current Attorney General sets forth. And personally, I believe we have the wrong man in that job right now, but still it's going to impact her generation when they do things the wrong way or set up things that are going to hurt us. So I'm happy to see the proactive space that you've given the young people, because folks we're not paying enough attention to them. We really aren't, Kim. And I just want to emphasize how important that gang database and those injunctions are, because folks are not paying attention to it because they think it doesn't affect them. But when your child is put in that gang in the database and they can't live with their mom and dad anymore, they can't get a job, they're having trouble because they have that choke chain around their neck, then they become homeless. Exactly. And we're not paying enough attention to the homeless to even recognize how many young people are actually homeless in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's the largest part of the homeless population is under the age of 30,
including
a lot of really small children.
And they're making so many homeless groups or they've been in existence. Like me, I'm just learning about it. Like I'm on Hollywood Boulevard over there where they got these clinics and these spaces, and you see these young people lining up at a youth place waiting for it to open so they can get service that's only from a certain age to, like, you know, teenagers to young adults. Right. And it's a lot of people in that line.
Well, you know, and I hate to separate us from Hollywood because there is a distinction. We have a homeless village on the overpass of the Harbor Freeway at 51st Street. That whole block overpass is filled with nothing but homeless people. You come to King and Broadway, north of King, is lined up with tents for the homeless. Hollywood has those places already established because they've had to deal with runaways. Well, hear what I'm saying, Jaime. They're not just homeless. They ran to Hollywood. They ran away and became homeless because they ran away for that Hollywood magic. We have a lot of, and I'm talking years ago. Yeah. It's evolved, but this is kind of where the Hollywood homeless youth started in kids that actually ran away. They weren't put out.
What I'm experiencing is people going wherever the survival is. These people are migrating. They're like flocks of pigeons. If it's good this season over here, I'm listening to these conversations. I'm sitting in these rooms listening to these people while they trying to get these free showers and they conversation and dialogue. The police were doing it, and a lot of them, it's a lot of police brutality going on right now. A lot of unfair, unjust things going on with them right now, and it's people out there struggling. It's people having to quit. I've had conversations in the last week. A lady quit her job because she gets off at 1:00, and the fact they run you out of park at 6 a.m, she don't have a place to sleep to get to work the next day. You know, it's a lot of struggles. It's a lot of different forms of homelessness out there.
I think one of the things too that you find with Hollywood is that it's true that there's this myth that youth that are without housing are all in Hollywood. But when we went to juvenile hall and camp and talked to just the young people that were involved in sex work, that just had sex work charges, that myth of that Hollywood sex worker, that teen sex worker, is really not the case anymore. No. The majority of the tracks now are Figueroa, Sepulveda down by the airport, Long Beach Boulevard in Compton, and there's no resources on those blocks. No. So where you have the majority of the young people involved in sex work or working the streets, there's no shelters. There's no, and they end up in Hollywood because that's the only place they can get into housing. Yeah. So we need to really push that those same resources exist in the communities that most need it, and that they exist across the county. One of the campaigns we've been pushing, and we haven't had luck. It's actually been the hardest thing to win. We've won a lot of things, but the hardest thing is when you try to touch the system's money. Oh. So, one of our campaigns is just to take 5% from law enforcement. Well, and if we could do that, we could get.
And look, Kim, you know, I love you, girl, and I have debated with you about that. See, because you take their money, they're going to put you out and appoint somebody else to run your program that you built. But now you do understand that, don't you?
No, because we don't get any city or county money, so we're not beholden to them. So we don't have to worry about
it. If you get it from them, you will be beholden to them, and they're going to.
No, we don't want the money. We want the money to go to a youth development department where everybody in the county could apply.
I agree. You know, I agree with you, Kim. But if you take their money, they're going to change your operation.
But it's not their money. It's our tax money.
I know it's our tax money, but it's designated to them.
It's not going to go to us. It's going to go to Ceasefire. It's going to go to Jaime for his program. It's going to go to...
Not from LAPD. Oh, no. I love the way that sounds, but I just know...
It's just language. Whatever you go after, you got to put it in the proper language and so they can hold on to that paperwork, because if it's not in writing, it's not existing.
And LAPD is not, like I said, they're not trying to fix it.
They've been pushing it for years, and I don't know how close they've been knocking on that door, but consistency is a reality, though, right?
This year we just won our first youth development department in the county of Los Angeles, a youth diversion and youth development department, and as many as 10,000 young people a year won't get arrested. Instead, they'll be diverted away from no fingerprinting, no criminal index with the FBI, no arrest record. So
that's what's up.
We're gonna win it. We are.
That's why it was so important.
Persistence.
We're gonna name a youth center after you, Sister Heron.
That's right.
Name the youth center after what?
After you.
They gonna pay homage to you.
I don't think so, but and it's okay, because I'm gonna come sit on the steps and just welcome the young people in, because you know what, this is what we have to do for ourselves. And one of my frustrations is happy that your push got us results. Okay, because for a long time I have been disenfranchised with the political arena. And my whole thing is I'm looking for the community. I want to see the community action groups move forward rather than, have another oversight committee assigned by the mayor or the sheriffs or whatever. I want the community to have our own oversight board where we can actually have some control. And you're just chipping away, and I'm just so proud of you, Kim.
Oh, I'm just so proud. A lot of people, but thank you so much.
But look, I would you like to share your backstory?
No.
Okay, that's all right, because I've been knowing Kim for a long... No, it's not boring. No, it's not. There's nothing boring
necessary,
about it.
Because when people see the present, they want to know what happened in the past, because it gives a lot of people courage. Yeah. I'm the same way, and when I get out that shell and people learn where you came from, to know where you're going, they understand it better.
this is the thing that brings us together. We all share that common bond. So somebody would respect you if they knew your story because they've been through that too. Mm-hmm. What they wouldn't respect if you come and try to tell them what they need to do and you ain't been through nothing. Yeah. It's like
it kills that perception that they're going to have that false perception. So you definitely got to give them a little storyline of what's going on.
Some semblance of familiarity with the arena. You got to have some kind of sensitivity to it and familiarity. Really.
Short bio.
Short bio, yeah.
Well, I could tell you why I really been pushing hard for youth development, for there to be a youth department in LA County and LA City. When I was born here in LA and I came up here in LA, but then my mom also needed support, so she sent me to the South Bronx. And the South Bronx at the time, I was like everybody born 1980s and on. We came up in the crack epidemic. We came up in the AIDS epidemic. We came up in like devastating economic times. Yes. You had Reaganomics and globalization, massive cuts to schools. So we came up in a rough time. And when I hit the South Bronx, it had been burnt down the decade before because landlords wanted to. They didn't think they were making enough rent off of black and brown people. All the white people had left. And so they would burn down their buildings intentionally, hire people to, arsonists to burn them down. And a lot of people died. But by the time I got there, then the South Bronx looked like a war zone. And it was the poorest congressional district in the country in terms of income. So I would walk by these, literally, you would walk block after block, and all there was bricks on the ground, just rubble, like if it had been bombed out.
Yeah.
And then the buildings that were standing were, a lot of them abandoned. I stayed in what's called HPD, Housing Preservation Development, which was buildings that had been abandoned by landlords, so the city took them over, and they were in such bad shape. They were, holes in the floors, no heat and hot water, just horrible shape. And despite the fact that was the conditions, I felt safer in New York City in the South Bronx than I did in LA. Because there was banging, but banging wasn't like, it was drug crews versus drug crews. It wasn't like random acts of violence like you had in LA. People didn't have yards and their housing wasn't as good. They didn't have the sunshine, etc. But people knew each other. The trains and the buses were open 24/7, so you weren't trapped in your neighborhood. You could move. You could travel for work at a reasonable cost. You could travel. You could even hustle socks on the street and make a living. Not a great living, but there were so many people that you could hustle. And most importantly, there were youth centers everywhere. In New York City, even way back in the 1950s, when people were first starting to pay attention to the more modern era of so-called street gangs, LA went after it like harsh.
Yes.
Gang databases, gang injunctions, crash units, helicopters, 65 Watts Rebellion, the first use of military tanks against the people.
Yes.
Battle ram.
But New York City in 1955 put 300 youth workers on the street. They called them gang workers. So people like Jaime, OGs that had a relationship in the community, were put on the streets. And they opened up the youth centers from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. So by the time I got there in the 80s, there was already youth centers everywhere, even though it had been burnt down. So that's when I and that's why I really believe in this view that we need youth development here.
Well, you just spoke about some very critical differences between New York and LA. We were all living under the injunction because Gerald Gates thought that he was going to kill it, wipe it out by any means necessary. His officers were going to win this drug war, and he polarized our community against them. He really did. The mistreatment, the crash unit, the heavy-handedness, the corruption, it all snowballed in a horrific way that hurt more, I'm sure, than they intended. But in the years, since we've opened a dialogue or communication where you really can ask for that LAPD money with a straight face, and they don't arrest you for it, But we are almost out of time, and I'm so sorry I missed you because I really want you to come back.
Okay? Anytime.
We're going to keep doing it until we get it straight. But I want you, in the last few seconds, to say something to your friends, encouraging, and you too.
Earlier you had said the youth, this generation is going to be the next future, but I just look at it as people fought for us to sit in the same bus, to be in the same restaurant. Whatever the issue was back then, they fought for us so it could be better for us. Now it's our turn to fight for the next generation, to fix the next generation, because we don't want them to go through the same thing we went through, you know. We want youth centers, but we want it coming from the police budget. Why? Because they get so much money. Yeah, that little money is not going to bother them. So
yes,
we're going to go ask for that little money.
We're going to bring you back and discuss that in detail. Come on, Kim.
If people want to get involved in this dream, or you want help getting off the gang database, or you want help getting off a gang injunction, or make sure that your name, if you're one of those people that was affected by the lawsuit, is off, you can contact us. The email is action@youth, YOUTH, the number 4, justice.org, or you can call us at our community center, which is 323-327. I'll give you the main line, 323-235-4243. Thank you so much.
And we'll post that number on Facebook, too. Because I just...
They definitely got enough. They got too much information. They got to come back.
They really do. And we really need to post information so folks can find you, because it's very important that we, like this young lady, find a way to help ourselves.
That's right.
And I so respect what you said, because that's just the truth. And look at the future. Okay, well, I guess we're out of time. That was a fast half hour with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jaime, for coming and joining us
Appreciate
tonight.
it. Always a pleasure.
Yes. God bless your community family. Thank you for listening. And Gang Talk will be back next week.